Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician, and this is Holomancer.
And of course Dora, the most daring reporter.
We are infinitely grateful that we have another opportunity to see you all again.
Today we have prepared for you a top of the best and worst new legendary cards.
We hope this list will help you choose the right crafting targets. Our top is based only on objective data from HS Replay, TempoStorm, HearthstoneDex.net and of course Vicious Syndicate.
Our main goal was to determine the most useful and completely useless cards in the current metagame.
To do this, we created the utility factor.
This algorithm is based on 10 factors including the popularity and effectiveness of the card, the win rate of decks that use the card in standard and wild modes, average popularity since release, versatility across multiple strategies, popularity and importance within a class, and usefulness for the duels mode. Data from the standard format affects the final result more than data from other formats. Other than that, the overall win rate of the decks that use the card and the effectiveness of the card when it is played during a match matter more than popularity.
So, for example, a card that is not used in any meta deck, has low popularity even in experimental or fan decks, also has an efficiency below 40% in both game formats, and is useless for duels, will receive 0 utility points. At the same time, a card that demonstrates 60% efficiency, affects the metagame in both formats, is used in several meta archetypes and is extremely important for at least half of the decks of a certain class is able to get 100 utility points according to our algorithm.
Please pay attention to an important fact. Most of the data was up to date at the time of testing. Evolution of the metagame or changes in the balance can lead to a significant decrease or increase in the utility score for some cards.
Let's not waste a minute and move on to review the test results. Asvidan, the Grand Shield, got the fewest points. The card has extremely low popularity and win rate in both standard and wild formats. Despite this, the card found a place in experimental versions of Enrage Warrior, but only 14% of warriors experimented with this tool after the nerf. According to our algorithm, the card received only 15 utility points. This is the worst map to craft at the moment.
Bonelord Frost Whisper is the worst neutral card. Players are still trying to find utilization for this unusual effect, but the card is not used in any of the current archetypes. In addition, even experimental decks have very low efficiency. Only 1% of druids use Elder Nadox in experimental decks, making it the least popular new legendaries and completely useless for the standard format. So why did Elder Nadox get 25 points? The card has a high played win rate of out of meta decks in wild format. In other words, most matches in which the player managed to play this card ended in victory for him, which means the card is extremely effective in certain scenarios. Most often, such cards have combo potential.
Despite a fairly high popularity, Brightwing has not found a place in standard meta decks. Although this card can be found in the experimental Reno archetype in the wild format.
The Scourge received the same amount of utility points. Expensive late-game board generating cards are no longer powerful enough for modern competitive play. The only advantage of this card is the fact that this tool was used for a short time in the meta deck of the standard format.
Unexpectedly for us, Felarin the Forgotten turned out to be a completely useless card for the standard format. The win rate even in experimental decks is disgusting. But players are experimenting with this tool in the wild. In addition, we found this card in the starting decks for the duels mode. In general, the utility factor is 28 points.
Frostmourne is another card from the Path of Arthas set that got very low points. The card is almost useless in the standard format, although it has a fairly high played win rate. The problem is that implementing delayed value is quite difficult. But in the wild format, the card found a place.
Grand Magister Ramit is used in the Casino Mage archetypes, but this card is more effective in wild than in standard. The card can also be found in effective decks for the duels mode. According to our algorithm, Halderon Brightwing has a 33% utility rate. Only 7% of hunters use this card, but it is part of the arcane archetype. The effectiveness of the card is slightly higher in experimental wild decks on low ranks than in the standard format.
Next on the list is Overlord Drakuru. The card is useful for the big shaman archetype in both formats, but in wild it's more of an experimental low-tier deck. The disadvantage is the low popularity of big strategy compared to other shaman decks.
Vixalis got one more point thanks to the high played win rate, which is not surprising, since the card is a combo component. Using the card in the wild format is more of an experiment.
The hunter is very unlucky with the legendary cards in the new expansion. Hope of Quel'Thalas is a completely useless card at the moment, but at the same time, the card shows good effectiveness in experimental decks in both standard and wild formats on low ranks. Deathbringer Sarfang is a free Death Knight card that hasn't been able to find a niche in competitive play, but it's a very popular tool in non-meta decks. In addition, the card shows a fairly good win rate in experimental decks in the wild format.
Despite the fact that Darkened Drather has a fairly high played win rate, the card is used in decks with low efficiency and popularity. The usefulness for duels mode is an important advantage, but the current overall result is not enough to recommend crafting this tool.
Sistus Valna received too few points according to our algorithm. Despite the fact that over 30% of priests use this card, and a fairly balanced played win rate, decks that use this tool have terrible efficiency. The card in wild format is a bit more useful.
Thorable Ore is another card with high flexibility and popularity within the class, but at the same time low efficiency. The card shows the best results in the Enrage archetype, although it is just an optional tool.
Lord Marrowger is another free Death Knight card that found a niche outside of the meta. The usefulness of the card for wild mode is slightly higher than for the standard, but the Unholy archetype is more of a tier 3 or even tier 4 deck. The Sunwell is another free card, but this time for all classes. Despite the high popularity and flexibility, this tool is used more in low-level decks. The only significant advantage is its usefulness for the duel mode, since this card is used in some Mindrender Alusha builds.
Despite the powerful effect, Anachronos failed to become an important card for the Paladin. Despite the balanced win rate, the main decks that use this tool have a rather low efficiency. According to our algorithm, the card currently has only 43 utility points. This value is probably not enough to invest 1600 dust.
The main disadvantage of Devourer of Souls is the low effectiveness of the strategies that use this tool, but at the same time, the card has a huge combo potential. For this reason, it can hardly be called useless, rather it is a card that has not yet realized its potential.
Next on the list is High Cultist Facelift. If you manage to successfully implement this card, you can get a ton of benefits and significantly increase your chance of winning, but the main disadvantage is that this card is used only in extremely ineffective decks. Rotgill is experiencing similar problems. The card has a high played win rate but is used in low efficiency decks. This card has a slightly higher efficiency than the previous one, but is used much less frequently within the class.
Blood Matriarch Lyadrin is the first card on our list that you should definitely look out for as a crafting target. The card managed to get 56 utility points. This tool is used in the effective Paladin archetypes, Pure and Silverhand. Although it's worth noting that for Pure Paladin, the main archetype of the class, Lyadrin is rather an optional option. The card also shows high utility in wild format, as it is used in the competitive Call to Arms deck.
The main advantage of Invincible is its usefulness for several archetypes. The card has a fairly good efficiency, but the strategies in which it is used are not good enough. In addition, the card is rapidly losing popularity in the standard format. Potionmaster Putricide is characterized by extremely high popularity in the standard format and acceptable efficiency. Too many rogues use this card. The effectiveness and usefulness of the card in the wild format is much lower. The Thief strategy is more of a fun deck. The disadvantage is also the lack of a card in the dual starter decks.
Northamar Theran is highly effective in both formats, although it is not always used in the most efficient archetypes. The only significant drawback is the uselessness for the duel mode. Next on the list is Anubricon. The map has become the new core for Ramp Druid. Over 60% of druids use this tool, but the card has several drawbacks. At the moment, it is not very flexible as it is only useful for one standard archetype, the effectiveness of which is gradually declining. Other than that, we didn't find this card in effective starter decks for duels.
Thessarian has a similar disadvantage. If it weren't for the rune limitation, this card could have gotten significantly more points. Unfortunately, most Death Knight cards can only be used in specific strategies, which reduces their flexibility. Otherwise, the card has almost no flaws.
The first legendary weapon for the Demon Hunter has a huge impact on the class. This is a key card that has no alternatives for several strategies. One of the major downsides is the fact that the card is almost useless in wild format, since the spell strategy is more of a fun experiment at low ranks.
Next on the list are a handful of Death Knight cards that have achieved roughly the same results. Alexandros Mograine, like the subsequent cards, has only one drawback: low flexibility. Patchwork makes a huge difference to the class. Almost every second Death Knight deck uses this tool. The map is also useful for both wild format and duel mode. In 4th place is Lady Deathwhisper. The card is the only reason to buy the Path of Arthas mini-set. This is one of the key cards for the Frost archetype, which has become the most effective after the last nerf. And finally Overseer Frigidaire. The effectiveness of this card has exceeded all expectations. The card is useful for all game modes and has a big impact on the metagame.
Despite the fact that the Death Knight continues to dominate the metagame, Blizzard has not been able to fully realize the potential of the new class. Why do we think so? We collected all the facts about the current state of affairs in our previous video. Don't miss it.
In honorable 2nd place is Shadow of Demise. This is the best class legendary card in the new set. Unlike previous Death Knight cards, this legendary spell has incredible flexibility. The card is too good for most of the rogue archetypes across all game modes and formats. This card is impossible to find an alternative.
And finally the king of our list is Asvidan Bloodsworn. The card has incredible popularity and is the main card in the metagame. This is an important tool for a huge number of archetypes in all game modes. According to our algorithm, the utility ratio of this card is 95%. Asvidan lost a few points due to the average win rate of the decks in which it plays. The indicator turned out to be not so impressive, since this card is also used in low-performance decks. This is definitely the first tool you should craft.
As you can see, you don't need to have a lot of new legendary cards in your collection to play effectively. The March of the Lich King expansion failed to bring a lot of new things to the matter. At best, we expect a slow evolution of competitive play, and increased diversity through the introduction of new balance changes, and the release of new cards.
Some new strategies, in addition to buffs, need favorable conditions to gain competitiveness. A great example is Enrage Warrior. This strategy appeared in the previous expansion. It took a long time for the deck to become the only effective warrior archetype. The same goes for Evolve Shaman. It is also worth noting that most of the new strategies from Castle Nathria were much less fortunate.
What do you think of the March of the Lich King set?
Is it a good enough expansion?
How many new legendary cards have you managed to collect? Share your data and opinion in the comments and join the survey on our community tab.
Finally, we would like to express our huge gratitude to our patrons.
Dear friends, your support is incredibly important to us.
Thanks to each of you for being with us today.
We hope to be able to get in touch in the future.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.